Welcome, everybody. We are back for another show here on Fantasy in Frames Wednesday. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. This is JT. And this is obviously Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football Podcast here on the Fantasy in Frames Network. Tonight, we got a very, very special episode for y'all. And it's something you don't see a lot of out there in the IDP world. And that is we're going to be doing an offense and IDP combined rookie mock draft review. JT and I, we took part in this mock draft. It's a 3-round mock, rookies only, both for offense and IDP. And we hope that this is going to give you all, especially those who play in combo leagues where you have offensive players and defensive players, we're hoping that this gives you a little bit of insight into how we're valuing offensive players compared to the IDPs out there. And of course, we're talking about rookies. So before we get into all that, let's get into this. And folks, for those who are just tuning in, or we just finished Dynasty 365, the Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast, one of the core podcasts here. We have a lot of Dynasty pods, but that's one of the core podcasts we have here at Fantasy in Frames. We just finished that with Aiden Weingarter. You head over to our YouTube channel and check that out, or if you like listening to us in podcast form, it'll be posted on the Dynasty 365 podcast early tomorrow morning. But this is Shoot the Gap, which this will also be available in podcast form early tomorrow morning. And welcome everybody who's watching. And I know as everybody starts trickling in, we'll get some comments in the chat probably. But before we get into talking about the results of this mock, JT, buddy, how are you doing for those who didn't watch last hour?
Doing all right. Getting deep in this. It feels like the draft was like a long way away, and now it's like right around the corner. So trying to get all these last articles written, trying to get all the last evaluations of these rookies in here. Obviously, defense is a little bit different leading up. Offense, a ton of people have been talking about these guys for months and sometimes years if you're in the Devy C2C type of leagues, but defensively not so much. So I feel like these are kind of the last guys that everyone learns about. Really defensive heavy draft this year, so excited about to see who goes where in the NFL draft, but it's always a little tougher, I think, to pick some of these defensive guys out until you see where they actually go and what teams are on in the NFL draft. But we're going to do our best to give you some of the guys we like and who we're going to be looking out for once the draft actually happens.
Absolutely. So let's just get into it, man. Let's get into talking about our results of this draft. And, let's see. Let's start off with the number one pick here. Again, it's a 3-round rookie mock. No, was there a 3rd-round reversal? No.
We did. So I had the last pick of the 1st round, so I got the first pick of the 2nd round, and then you took the last pick of the 2nd round, so you got the first pick of the 3rd. So we did reverse it each at the end of each round.
Gotcha. Okay, just checking. All right. So number one overall in this combo rookie IDP and offensive mock, we heading into the NFL draft. Or heading towards the NFL draft, I took Ashton Jeanty. Whether it's an offensive player or an IDP, like this guy, there's a reason why even in Superflex leagues he's considered to be the 101 in rookie draft picks. Like no one on offense, I believe, as well as on defense, measures up into what he can produce. We look at his yardage last year, 2,287 yards. Close to 1,700 of that came after contact. You look at his missed tackles forced at Boise State, 125. The next highest in all of college football was Corey Kiner out of Cincinnati with 82. Just an elusive back, explosive back. It's kind of a slam dunk here, right? JT, what are your thoughts on JT?
I think JT has to be number one in almost any draft, to be honest with you, other than IDP combined drafts. And the only reason, and I'm going to bring it up, the number 2 pick, I had him. I went with Travis Hunter, wide receiver, cornerback out of Colorado. I think the only logical pick to take over Ashton Jeanty is Travis Hunter if you believe Travis Hunter is going to try to play both ways in the NFL. Because if he does, and this guy's playing, because I believe, and depending on who you look at and who you follow, I believe Travis Hunter is the number one just athlete overall player in this NFL draft. Not fantasy per se, but for NFL draft personally, I think he's the best player in the draft. So if you believe that he can play wide out and cornerback, and I believe he's the number one wide receiver and number one cornerback, now there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with me, but there's a lot of people who do. If he ends up playing even 65 or 70% of offense and then plays a majority of defense, so you say he plays almost the whole game on defense, I think that's worth him being the number one pick. If you still go with Jeanty at one, I wouldn't fault you for it, but I think Hunter has to be number two. And if he ends up playing mostly defense and just a little offense, obviously this is going to be a disappointing pick here at number two. But if you're in a start cornerback only league, especially, and he qualifies as a corner, and you could start him at cornerback, he's going to out every other cornerback in the league by a ton, by a wide margin, just in the fact that he's going to get some offensive snaps at wide receiver. And you got to figure if he's playing some offense, they're going to try to get him the ball when he's in there. He's not going to be out there running wind sprints for no reason. So I do think Travis Hunter is a special athlete. I do think he's going to have a legit shot to play both ways in the NFL. And I believe him and his agent have told teams that, like, he expects to have a shot to play both ways. If you clearly don't want him to play both ways, you probably should think about trading that pick or not taking him, because he wants to try to do that. So for me, if that ends up happening, he's going to be a unicorn on defense, giving you offensive production as a possibly wide receiver 3 or flex play on offense in a defensive spot that you just can't. I mean, you can't get much better than that.
We got Mace Riney over here. What's going on, Mace? If you can get a few offensive touchdowns and yards as a cornerback, he's going to win someone a championship in true position leagues, 100%.
Yep.
And again, we're to take a step backwards when we're talking about IDP here. We're talking about a PPR draft, Superflex draft, big play, meaning the interceptions and the sacks are like 5 or 6 points a piece. And a decent tackle floor, 2 points for a solo, 1 point for an assist. So everything's kind of balanced in that regard. You're maximizing the production there. So take that a step further. When I put in Ashton Jeanty, I immediately was like, I wonder if JT is going to forget about Travis Hunter. And then I remember you were like bringing up this very same point that Mace just brought up here, that, if you get and that you brought up also, that if you can get, if he's dual eligible on Sleeper, right? That's the key, right? If he's dual eligible on Sleeper or whatever platform you play on, like, I can totally co-sign with you and say you could make the argument that he should be the number one in mixed drafts, offense and IDP rookie drafts. Absolutely. But at the same time, it's the person who, let's say you take Travis Hunter first overall, like, Jeanty is not a bad consolation prize, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're getting him at a number 2, you're stoked. If you're getting Jeanty at 2, if somebody takes Travis Hunter at 1, like I said, just to start DB league, not quite as valuable. But if you're in a high scoring start cornerback league where he's going to count as a corner, and you're getting, say, 3 points or 4 points for a pass deflection, he's all over people. He gets his hand on the ball so often. He's going to get you interceptions. If you're playing in a 5 or 6 interception league, he's going to get you 5 to 8 to 10 picks a season. I truly believe it. The guy breaks on the ball so well. He obviously has great hands. What's the old joke? Why do fast guys play cornerback? Because they got terrible hands. That's the joke. Well, he's the best wide receiver too. So you got a guy playing DB who's also the best wide receiver, has fantastic hands. I just think I don't know if we're ever going to see another guy like him. Now, are you taking boom bust risk here? Yes, you are. if he plays just strictly cornerback and only plays a couple patches on offense, I think you are going to see a little bit of a hit with the value, but he still is going to count for something because he's going to give you offensive production. If he plays just wide receiver, I don't think that's going to happen. But even if he ends up being a full-time wide receiver and he plays like a little bit of defense, as long as he qualifies for defense, he's going to be great. Even if he doesn't qualify defense and you have to play on offense, I think he's a good enough offensive player if he's playing offense full-time that drafting him in the top 3 or 4 in your draft is still legit. And I think if he was a full-time wide receiver now, if he came in and said, I'm going to play wide receiver, like strictly wide receiver, I think he's a top 4 pick in fantasy as a wide receiver.
So we got Angie in the chat. What's going on, Angie? Great to see you here on Shoot the Gap. She says, what teams do you guys think would be most likely to let Hunter play both sides of the ball? I'm so stoked about his potential in my hybrid league. Last time I checked, the New York Giants don't really have a quarterback situation going on there that they could potentially, and the defense is probably going to be on the field quite a bit for the Giants this year and for subsequent years. So I could see that as a fit. I could see New England as a fit. Just off the top of my head, like those are
even the Jags at 5. I don't think he gets to 5 to the Jags, but I think the Jags would be all over letting him play offense and defense because he would be their, right along with Brian Thomas Jr. as their 2 best players on offense, and then on defense, he would be their best player on defense. As far as in the secondary. So I think they would absolutely let him play both ways. I think the Browns, if you're taking him at 2, I think you have to let him play both ways. Like, what are you doing if you're taking him at 2 and not letting him play both ways? That's probably all those are real questionable situations. I love the idea of him going 4 to the Pats or 5 to the Jags because I think Drake May and Trevor Lawrence would absolutely use him. I think they would absolutely be firing the ball to him. So I like the quarterback situations there more. So for fantasy wise, I like that situation better. But I think even to the top guys, I mean, I think Tennessee would be everyone's most hated landing spot because if he goes there, then they don't take Cam Ward. And then you're like, what are they doing? So then you're like, oh, that sucks. Right now, goes to Cleveland. That's another like, oh, okay. He's probably their second best wide receiver, going into the season, possibly their first best wide receiver, depending on how you, feel about some of the guys on their team. But I think, New England, he's by far the best player the second he goes there. And if he goes to the Jags with everybody else they've moved, him and Brian Thomas Jr. are the top 2 players. And the Giants, same thing, him and Neighbors. So I think those guys would play fantastically off each other.
Samuel is in the chat here. Says, if he's a full-time wide receiver, he jumps Genty for number 1.
I don't think he does. I think JT's still number 1. But like I said, if he ends up being a full-time wide receiver, and I think if people knew he was going to be a full-time wide receiver, I still think he would be a top 3 or 4 pick in almost every format, to be honest with you. And the big thing for IDP is if he gets dual eligibility and say he plays 90% of offense and he plays like 25 defensive plays a game, if he qualifies for defense in your league, that's going to be monstrous that you can play him on the defensive side of the ball as a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 for his team. I mean, that's just cheating right there. I mean, that's huge. So I'd also, as we're talking about this, Jorge, if you are not the commissioner of your league, I would be asking in advance what the commissioner of your league plans on doing. If they say, hey, I'm just going to go whatever MFL says, or I'm going to go with whatever Sleeper says, okay, that's going to be a little more iffy. If you're in like a Reality Sports Online league, which I am, both my IDP leagues are on Reality Sports Online, I actually have the ability as the commissioner to go in and change those positions. So I can make him a cornerback / wide receiver in a league like that. So I would want to make sure that I knew where my commission's head was at before I made this pick. And I would absolutely ask that question to see where their head's thinking. This is a big question, and I hate to even bring it up, but why am I blanking his name? Tight end, New Orleans Saints.
Jawan
quarterback. Why am I blanking?
Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill, thank you. I don't know why I blanked on Taysom Hill. It was a big question in a bunch of my leagues. MFL made him a QB last year. Well, he was a tight end in all my other leagues the year before. He could play QB or tight end. Well, a bunch of my leagues went to he only counted as a QB because that's what MFL did. And a bunch of my leagues, they wouldn't change it. And it totally changed his value. It absolutely changed his value in certain leagues. So that's a question I would want up front from my commissioner before the draft started.
All right, let's continue on with our IDP and offense rookie mock draft. So, given the format that we're talking about here, and again, this is pre-NFL draft rookie, prospect mocks. Obviously, we'll have rookie mocks once they're actually rookies, right? But given the scenario that we're playing out here, you and I can safely say we took two of the best options, as our first picks, right? So now, when we get to, pick 3 through 12 for both of us, this is where we get into a little bit of the strategy behind our philosophies and how we attack a combo league with offense and IDP players. When you were selecting your picks, so let me run down the rest of the first round here. So at the third pick, I took Cam Ward. You took Amarian Hampton. I took Travion Henderson. You took Shedeur Sanders. The next IDP, I took Abdul Carter. You took Luther Burden. I took Tech McMillan. You took Emeka Egbuka. I took Jahad Campbell. And then you took Quishon Judkins. So, obviously you went really heavy with the offensive skill players in the first round. Why is it that you did that, and what is your thought process behind taking those players where you did?
So it always depends on your league, and we always say that for IDP, depending on scoring and how things work out. A majority of my leagues, though, unless there's just a clear-cut absolute stud on defense, most of the defensive guys fall to late second, early third before I start seeing those guys come off the board. So for me, naturally, I'm going to be taking offensive guys for the most part, unless I absolutely love a defensive player and depending on the defensive scoring. So I will take a defensive guy like late first round or mid second round if I really love them. And depending on my team needs, if I'm a team that like really is desperate for a good defensive end, and I think there's an absolute stud out there that could be a TJ Watt, Myles Garrett type player, then that's a guy I will consider depending on my scoring late first, mid second round. But typically in a lot of my leagues, the defensive guys really start seeing, like I said, depending on who they are, middle to late second round, early third. And then we see a pretty heavy third or fourth round of IDP guys. But that's just typical of my leagues.
So my thought process for, going with, Ward, Henderson, Carter, Jahad Campbell, my thought process is like, okay, in these combo leagues and rookie drafts, I don't really think so much about ADP as I focus more on who do I think is the best player at each position available. I don't think of it in terms of a value situation, just because, you could make the argument, like Emeka Egbuka, great slot wide receiver, what are the chances of him, consistently putting up, double-digit fantasy points his rookie year, depending on where he lands, versus a linebacker, or like a Jahad Campbell. I kind of see, and again, it depends on where Campbell goes to either, but I feel like for IDP for tackles, you could I could make the argument that linebacker, at least the elite linebackers, could go into the first round. The reason why I took Abdul Carter is it is so rare to find such a game-changing defensive lineman / edge rusher in rookie drafts, period, let alone in veteran drafts, period, and fantasy football in general. And so when you have somebody with his metrics, with his performances, with his track record, on the board. Again, my thought process goes, and again, in these combo rookie mocks or rookie drafts, let me get the best player available. So I thought, Carter was the best defensive lineman available. I thought Campbell was the best run tackling linebacker available. And so that's kind of where I went. I did like I really liked your Amari Hampton one. And that's the one when you typed it in there, I was like, damn it, I should have gone with him over Ward. But don't get me wrong, like Cam Ward is not a horrible consolation prize. I mean, he has, the arm, he has the big time throw percentage, he has the great NFL quarterback rating, as a college player. So, I mean, obviously there's a reason why he's being considered to be the number one pick in the NFL draft by the Tennessee Titans, assuming that they don't make a trade. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process, where you can like rationalize taking the best IDPs available in the first round. But I understand completely the whole, okay, do you want to take the players you think are the best in the beginning, or do you want to play the value game? And I think there's merit in both ways of approaching this.
Yeah, Jorge, I was going to say, I'm in a couple salary cap leagues, and in those leagues, I tend to take defensive players a little earlier. And here's my reasoning. A lot of the top end defensive guys, if they're going in the first 10 picks, 15 picks, there's a chance they're coming in and starting right away. And I'm going to get to play them value wise. And if it's not a true dynasty in that you get to keep the guy forever, I want the guys that are going to produce early. I don't want to take a running back or a wide receiver who's not going to get me points until year 2 or 3. And then year 4, my contract runs out and I lose them. Right. So in those types of leagues, I'm all over an Abdul Carter. If he goes number 2 to the Browns, playing opposite Myles Garrett, in that type of league, I'm absolutely on him in the first round, because he's a guy that can come out, can give me production right away. And again, for me in my leagues, a little bit to my just the way I think about things is it's usually cheaper to extend a defensive end than it is a wide receiver or a running back in those types of leagues. So all my leagues, we get one extension per year, 1 or 2, depending on the league. So if I can extend Abdul Carter after he gives me a bunch of production for pretty cheap as a rookie contract, and I can extend him for what will probably most likely be 5 to 10 million less than a wide receiver or running back would be, then I'm all over that. Then I have a guy for a long time. I'm getting 6-8 years out of him for his career. Really nice. So then I'm much more likely to take those guys early on, knowing that I'm going to get immediate production, as opposed to maybe I'm taking a running back or wide receiver who's going to be wide receiver 3 or RB2 on their team for the first 2 years.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Let's get into the second round of our 3-round offense and IDP combo rookie prospect mock, I should say, because technically they're not rookies yet. Starting off with the first pick in the second round, you took Tyler Warren, and I was like, there's so many wide receivers available. There's no way JT is just going to go with Tyler Warren and get the best tight end in the draft. Yep. Oh yeah, he did. And I'm scrambling at this point. I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go? And so you and I both went tight end to start this round, with you taking Tyler Warren and me taking Elijah Arroyo. And again, for folks, if you go back and listen to our previous episodes, as well as go over to our YouTube channel and watch our previous episodes, where we're talking about the receiving options and the tight end options, we were talking about just how, dynamic of a player Tyler Warren is. We were talking about how large of an athlete Elijah Arroyo is and the pros and cons that they both bring to the table. So again, you taking the best tight end available makes a lot of sense there. Yes, I could have taken, other players at the second pick in the second round over Elijah Arroyo, but again, for me, it's who's the best available at the position at that time, and I didn't want to miss out at the tight end position. And I think so. Yeah. So you could sit there in the chat and you could play the argument of like, oh, you should have taken so and so, over this player because, But at the same time, what's really great about this draft this year is that for fantasy purposes, again, I'm not talking real NFL. I'm talking about for fantasy purposes. There's a lot of like talent out there in these drafts that you can find in the later rounds of your rookie drafts that, all of them you can rationalize have the upside to play this year depending on where they go, and have the potential to really give you a long-term quality investment. You then, at the third pick in the second round, JT, you went Caleb Johnson. Why don't you talk a little bit about Caleb Johnson?
Yeah, so Caleb Johnson's a guy, I'm a little lower on him than some other people in the fantasy landscape. Not that I dislike him, I just like some other running backs more. But at this pick, if he gets all the way to 2-3 and I'm up and I need a running back, man, I'm losing. I'm ecstatic because there's a lot of people that think he's RB2 or RB3 in this draft class. So if he gets all the way to the second round, I'm going to be smashing that. Right now, I have him as RB5 in a loaded draft class. So if I can get RB5 in the second round, give me that all day. So I also think, you talked about it with Warren and Arroyo going at the top of this round, and we have two more tight ends that went in this round. Really, I think tight end is something you're going to have to pay attention to what your premium is. Is your premium is it just 1 point, same as a tight end, or same as a wide, same as a running back? Is it 1.5? Is it 1.75? Is it 2? Are you in a spot where you're in a league where you can start, where you have to start two tight ends, or, you can play a tight end in your flex? Because that's going to matter a lot where these tight ends go. If you're in like a start two tight end or a 2.0 premium tight end league, I think of these tight ends go in the first round. But if I'm in a league that just is a straight IDP league with no tight end premium, you're just getting 1 point per reception, same as everything else, I see the second round and the third round being heavy tight end rounds. But I think these guys go a lot higher if the premium's higher, if you're at 1.75 or 2.0. So just wanted to point that out. We kind of had the idea that it was 1.0, so there wasn't like any kind of big extra premium for tight ends. So that's just kind of wanted to point that out to people, because I do think you're going to see Tyler Warren in a 2.0 tight end premium be more of a top 5 to 8 pick in a lot of drafts if you have a higher tight end premium. Like I said, Caleb Johnson, 2-3. I'm not as high on him as other people, but that's just outstanding value at that point. So I jumped on him.
Love it. For the fourth pick in the second round of this offense IDP rookie combo mock draft, I took Trey Harris. We talked about again on the receiving episode there. Like, this guy in 8 games put up over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. When we're looking at, efficiency metrics, and one of the more reliable efficiency metrics, we talk about yards per route run. 5.12 yards per route run, number 1 overall in all of college football. And I'm not just talking about the Power 5. I mean, like, all of the draft eligible wide receivers this year for the NFL draft. Like, this guy's number 1, average up the target 12 yards. What's really, really awesome is his contested catch percentage of 61.5%. And what really, sells me on a wide receiver on top of all that kind of completes the picture, is the fact that his quarterback rating when targeted is 149.5, which you're getting up there towards, the perfect region of quarterback passer ratings. But the number one reason why I took Trey Harris, besides all those metrics, is because JT basically took all the wide receivers in the first round. And I was basically stuck like, damn it, who's going to give me the most? Oh, right, Trey Harris is still there? Perfect. I'm taking him before JT takes him too.
And you know what? I would have taken Trey Harris with the next pick if you wouldn't have taken him. And usually I'm taking him at 2-2 or 2-3 in drafts. I just happened, with Caleb Johnson falling, I happened to grab him instead of Trey Harris with the pick before. But typically when Caleb Johnson is gone, which he usually is by 2-3, then I almost always am grabbing Trey Harris like 90% of the time. So you were reading me right, because I would have absolutely taken Trey Harris. I only did because Caleb Johnson fell. If you would have taken Caleb Johnson instead of Arroyo at 2-2, I would have taken Trey Harris at 2-3. So
very nice. Okay, so then we go on, 5th pick in the second round. You took Colston Loveland, your second tight end. So what was your thought process here for why you took him versus going maybe down another route, whether it's offense or IDP?
So again, Loveland's another guy. I think he's a really top end, high end tight end. I think he's falling in drafts a little bit just because of the injury. So no one's seeing him or talking about him here in the pre-draft process because of the shoulder surgery. I think he's going to be really good. I think it was a very close between him and Warren, coming into the draft. And now that Warren's tested, done all this stuff, and Loveland played on a bad offense and now has the injury, he's kind of fallen down. I think in the mid-second is just a great spot to grab him if he's still available. If you're in a 2.0 league, I can see Colston Loveland going at the very end of the first round. I think he could go 110, 111, 112. So without the high end tight end premium, I'd let him drop a little bit in this draft. But to me, at 2.5, that was just too good a value not to take him and taking. And obviously, these are different teams, so I'm not drafting all the same guys for the same team. But getting Warren and Loveland, who are my top 2 tight ends, I thought was worth it.
So for the next pick here at number 6, I took linebacker Carson Schweizinger, and we were talking about him during a linebacker rookie prospect episode, which again, folks, head over to Fantasy and Frames. Head over to our YouTube channel on Fantasy and Frames and watch that, or listen to the Shoot the Gap podcast for our previous breakdown. He reminds me a lot of Edgerrin Cooper because he not only has the run stopping prowess, but he also is pretty damn good at rushing the quarterback too. So he kind of gives you that dual nature there. Now the question is, wherever he lands in the NFL draft, are they going to use him as that dual threat, or are they just going to keep him in the box and say, okay, you're only going to rush the passer and be outside edge, or you're only going to be an off-ball linebacker and keep you inside? Or maybe there's somebody smart out there who's like, ooh, you have natural God-given abilities. Let's utilize these to their maximum potential. All 3 scenarios are there. But, at this point in the draft, second round, looking at my IDPs here, I want somebody who gives me versatility and definitely has the upside there and has a decent floor. So that's kind of where I went with Carson Schweizinger there at linebacker at 2. Next, you took Jalen Walker, JT. You took Jalen Walker, who is teetering between being defined as a linebacker or a defensive end. So what are your thoughts here with Jalen Walker?
Yeah, so first, before I get into Walker, Schweizinger, for you, this is going to be a very interesting off-the-ball linebacker class. I don't think there's a lot of high-end talent, and I don't think they're going to go very high in the draft because of how much talent there is at cornerback and at edge. So if you are somebody that needs linebacker help on your IDP team, you are probably going to have to look a little earlier to grab one of these guys. I think Campbell is clear cut number 1 off ball linebacker, which you took at 111. I think you're going to have to get him early if you want him. Schweizinger is going to be really interesting where he goes. He's a guy that could go in the second, also the third. He's a guy I wouldn't be scared even if he went in the third, depending on the landing spot. If he's got a clear-cut spot to start, a way to start, then I absolutely would take him in this area. Because, again, I think off-ball linebacker is going to be a little thin in this draft class. Jalen Walker, I love. If he gets the dual eligibility, that's where I'm really on him. If he ends up getting just linebacker eligibility, I don't love it quite as much as I love it if he gets the dual eligibility on Sleeper, or if on MFL he gets that defensive end eligibility. I really like that because I think he's going to play a little bit of both. I just think he's super uber talented, play banged up, but still put up great numbers. We've seen what Georgia defensive players have done the last couple of years in the draft. They've just been fantastic. They come in and they've been great in the league, and usually pretty early on in the league. To me, because his versatility is why I like him. So that's why I jumped on him this early as my first IDP off the board at 2.7.
Going next here, I took running back RJ Harvey. This guy, number 6 in all of the Power 5 and yards per hour on a 3.88. You look at his PFF rating here as a runner, RB8 overall, had over 1,500 yards, 22 touchdowns last year, only 2 fumbles. In terms of elusiveness and missed tackles force, he's the RB5 last year with 69. So the guy brings a lot to the table. He, in terms of their elusive rating, he ranks as the RB8. So impressive. He is a very impressive running back that, given, I know I'm going to say the cliche thing, but given the right landing spot, I think he's definitely somebody that can take the ball and run with it. And when we're talking about taking the ball running with it, coincidentally, as we're talking about running backs, one of the really cool metrics I like looking at is the breakaway run percentage and just how explosive these big plays are. When you look at that for all of the running backs in the Power 5, I had it just here. I'm not even looking at the right thing, so that's probably he ranks as the RB8. So this guy is like a home run threat waiting to happen, who's very elusive, who's shown the productivity. And again, getting that type of value in the second round, towards late second round at the running back position, I don't think you can go wrong with that situation.
So I'm going to just talk about through this scenario a little bit with you here, Jorge. I originally came in thinking that this draft load up on second round picks because you're going to just be drafting running back in the second round. I think I've adjusted my mindset on that. Not that I wouldn't want running backs in the second round, but seeing how tight some of these other positions are as far as depth wise and how deep RB is, I think we're going to see a lot of second rounds where we're seeing tight ends, wide receivers, and IDP go in the second round. And then third round, we're going to see a load of running backs go. Unless we see a handful of guys that end up going in the second or third round that we're not expecting right now in the NFL draft, then I can see some of those guys. That's where I think like an RJ Harvey, say he goes I'm just throwing off the top of my head, but say RJ Harvey goes like late second, early third round to like the Saints or the Chargers. I think he's going to fly up and be a second round pick for fantasy drafts then for sure. But say he doesn't go to somebody till the fourth round. I could see him being in that third round for fantasy mock draft mixed with a bunch of other guys that all got picked between the fourth and the sixth round. So it's going to be really interesting to see where these guys end up. But I just think, especially in tight end premium leagues, you're going to see a ton of tight ends go in the second round. You're going to see those very top end defensive players come off the board. And then you're going to see, like you said with Trey Harris, people are going to start doing the math on wide receivers and go, ooh, there's not a ton I like left, where there is a bunch of running backs I like. And You're going to see people maybe grab that second tier, third tier wide receiver in the second round going, I'll wait to get running back in the third and fourth round. So while I initially planned on taking a bunch of running backs in the second round, and like I said, I took Caleb Johnson because he fell. He's not made it out of the first round in many drafts. And I think the only reason he made it out of the first round is because we are doing IDP. So he dropped a little bit. Typically he'll go in the first round of your draft. And that's where I'm taking Trey Harris. So I really think that second round is going to be very interesting for a lot of leagues to see which way people go with drafts. Because you'll see we only took 2 running backs in the second round, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey. And I think that might end up being the norm in a lot of leagues, that we only see 2 or 3 running backs go in the second round because everyone is watching and see what tight ends fall, what wide receivers fall, what IDPs fall. As you can see, the rest of the draft, we went Jackson Dart, James Pierce, Jaden Higgins, Mason Taylor to finish out that second round.
Right. So going again for James Pierce, I mean, University of Tennessee, one of the 55 pressures, 8 sacks last year for PFF. Defensive stops, number 9 overall with 28. I mean, the guy is just a wrecking machine. So again, is he Abdul Carter? No, he's not Abdul Carter. Is he somebody who is a pretty good value in the second round at defensive line that maybe after he's not like a Will Anderson, who I'm saying is more on Abdul Carter's level, or I guess vice versa, where he could come in and be defensive player of the year or rookie of the year. But I could definitely see him being somebody who's a lot more utilized in his second year and his third year going forward. Again, since we're talking about
absolutely, I think second, third year could be a big breakout for him. But also, here's where I like James Pierce. I want him to go to a team that already has a good edge rusher, so it's not all on him. Where I'm nervous is if he goes to a team that doesn't really have an edge, and he now is expected to be the number 1 guy out of the slot, and he's having to take on all the best linemen. That's where I'm nervous. If he can be the second guy, I love that. If he can get another good guy on the other side, to me, Pierce goes up for me in drafts in that range. He's one of the guys I think is going to has absolutely one of the highest ceilings. He could be an absolute stud, but he makes me nervous. He's like one of those guys you go, why is he not getting fantasy points? Why is he not getting stats? Because you look at him, you're like, He does all this stuff really well. Why is he not chalking up stats? That's my only worry about him. But I do think he has a crazy high ceiling. He is one of those guys that could easily get, mid 15, 16, 17 sacks in a season, multiple years. He's got that type of ability.
Nice. Let's get into why you selected Jaden Higgins with the 11th pick.
So I will say I took Jackson Dart in between Harvey and Pierce.
Yes.
Dart, that is with me with 100% idea that Jackson Dart is either a late first round pick or early second round pick to someone. If he drops anywhere deeper than the first half of the second round, it would have to be an ideal landing situation for me to take him this early. If not, he's going to move down to third round for me. So this is like with the idea that like the Steelers take him, the Saints take him, the Browns take him at the top of the second round, or say Tennessee skipped on Cam Ward for some crazy reason and went Abdul Carter, and then they took Jackson Dart at the top of the second round. Then I would be on Dart here in the mid second round. If that doesn't happen, then he would be down on my list. Jaden Higgins to me is the second best X wide receiver in this draft class behind Trey Harris. I think they're very close. So the fact that I could get Harris, you got Harris early, right after where I usually would take him. So I jumped on Higgins here late because after seeing a couple of those guys go off the board, IDPs, I was checking on my IDPs. I thought there were some guys I liked that I could get a little later. So, and I thought Higgins by far was the next best wide receiver in this group. So I wanted to get him before we got to the third round because I figured he'd be gone right away in the third round. So that's why I grabbed Higgins there.
And then I finished off the second round with Mason Taylor,
which you stole from me. One of my absolutely favorite players. As soon as you put him in, I was like, I knew he wasn't going to get to the third round. I was like looking at, so I've been getting Mason Taylor like mid third in almost every mock draft. And I don't think that's going to happen once the real draft happens. I think he's a high second round pick. I've said it on a numerous podcast. If he went back to school, he would have been my tight end one clear cut first rounder next year, but he's falling a little bit this year just because it's so deep of a tight end class. I think he's going to go early second round. If the Colts don't take Tyler Warren, I would love to see them take Mason Taylor in the second round. I think he's going to end up having to be, you're going to have to spend a second rounder to get him, I think. I just think it's going to be very rare once the actual draft happens that he makes it to the third round.
He reminds me, honestly, well, first of all, you can't teach 6'5", 255 pounds. No, sorry, you can't do that. He reminds me, though, when you look at the yards after the catch, like he's not somebody who, how do I phrase this? Like,
he's not super explosive as far as like breaking tackles, making contract plays, but the guy's smooth route runner. He's got really, really nice hands. And if you look at the stats, and I brought this up a bunch of times, solid every year, freshman year to junior year, almost identical stats across the board. And he played with just absolute studs. He still put up good stats, which would be considered really, really good stats in almost every other year than this year, where tight ends broke records everywhere. Right. Did his stats not look good? But he's super young, 3-year starter at LSU, playing with nothing but pros. Playing with Jalen Daniels, playing with Garrett Nussmeier, who I think is going to be one of the top 3 QBs off the board next year. Played with, Neighbors, played with Brian Thomas. The guy has played with absolute studs. Obviously, his dad is Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer, defensive end for the Dolphins. He's got it in the genes. I just think he's highly underrated. And I've said it on our tight end show. I'm buying him now because next year, if he would have went back to school, you would have had to pay a first rounder to get him. So I'm taking the discount of getting him late second, early third this year.
Is he really the son of?
Yes.
No kidding.
Yep, and Zach Thomas is his uncle.
Okay, I did not put that together there. All right, so then we start the end of the beginning of the third round. First pick, I took Ja'Cory Brooks, wide receiver. We look at a lot of his he's a sneaky wide receiver at this point in the draft. Over 1,000 yards. Last year we look at the yards after the catch. 6 yards, yards after the catch per reception. That's phenomenal. Yards per out run is decent. For me, it's one of those things where like wide receiver is becoming a little bit more thin, so to speak. And so when I'm thinking about, what are we doing here let me pull up his contested targets really quickly because I had
Brooks is a guy that people are going to forget about a little bit because he went to Alabama, had success at Louisville. So I think people see that Louisville next to his name as opposed to Alabama, and they're going to not think about him as much. But uber talented guy coming out of high school.
Not to mention, this guy is a tough wide receiver who will go up and get the ball. He had in 2024 23 contested targets, came down with 16 of them for a 69.6 contested catch percentage. We look at quarterback passer rating when targeted. He's right there, wide receiver 21 in all of college football. So that is, I think, what's funny, JT, and I probably should have brought this up in previous episodes, but like normally I would filter a lot of my parameters to like the Power 5 or the big name schools, because there's always like people in like these smaller schools that put up absurd numbers that skew what their talent really is. But even in these situations, like a Trey Harris, a Ja'Cory Brooks, they're like, these guys are exceeding even like the outliers of outliers, which is crazy that I've not encountered before. Okay, so now we go down to the second pick in the third round. You went Matthew Golden. Thoughts on Matthew Golden?
So some people have Matthew Golden as the wide receiver 1 in this class. That's way too rich for my blood. I like Golden, but I don't like him that much. He's wide receiver 6 for me. He's a guy that I'm probably going to own almost none of, to be honest with you, because he's going to end up going way higher than I'm willing to draft him. The 4.29 at the combine is just got people salivating because he ran that fast. The problem, his production in college was not great. He just did not earn a ton of target share. He just didn't do a lot of the things you want to see metrics wise in his career. Not to say I don't think he could be a solid NFL wide receiver. I just think if you look at the metrics, he's going to have to defy a lot of metrics in order to be a quality NFL receiver. So I know a lot of people think he's a first round pick. I can see him going first round just because you know how the NFL is. They love size and speed. The fact that he ran a 4.29, somebody's going to fall in love with him and take him early. To me, I just am not going to draft him high enough. The fact that he made it to the third round, if that happens to me in drafts, I will be taking him. I will take him in the third round, but me taking him in the first round or like right at the top of the second round is probably going to be unlikely, which is mostly where I've seen him go in drafts, mock drafts so far. So again, that was just a pure value pick for me. I'm not a huge Golden guy, but if he gets to the third round, I just think the value is too high not to take him. And in all honesty, I would probably take him and then look to trade him at some point if I can get him there. Because a lot of people are talking about, Seahawks possibly taking him in the first round, a few other teams. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what the NFL, but we knew how the NFL is. They love those speed guys. Anybody running a 4.29. I mean, we saw Henry Ruggs go top 10 because he ran a crazy 40 times. So we've seen it happen. I'm not a Golden believer, but I'll take the value. I'll take the value.
For sake of finishing up this episode with talking about third round, let's focus on the IDPs in this round. Yeah. Let me read the rest of the draft. So then I took Nick Emenwari, safety. Then you took Devin Neal. I took Danny Stutzman, linebacker. Then you took Malachi Starts. I took Bishul Tootin. You looked Jalen Noel, then Dylan Sampson, Cam Scadaboo, Jalen Milrow, and then you ended with Jedi Barron. Let's go backwards. So again, we're talking about a cornerback / safety, plus 2 more safeties and the linebacker in this third round. Why Mr. Barron is somebody that you wanted to take with your last pick in this draft?
So I definitely want to take him here. I'm going to be looking to take him in the third or fourth round in most IDP drafts. I definitely want to take him here at the end because I want to talk about him a little bit. Sure. I think he's a Brian Branch type player. I really do. I think he's that guy that played cornerback in college, much like Brian Branch, but I think he can play slot corner in the NFL, but also can slide back and play some strong safety. I just think he has a lot of versatility. He won the best cornerback, defensive back award in college last year. He was a stud at Texas. if you watch the game where they played Ohio State and he took on Jeremiah Smith, the true freshman who is maybe the most touted wide receiver we've seen in a really, really long time, he absolutely was all over him in that game. I think Johnny Barron is moving up draft boards. I really think he goes top 20 in this draft. And if he goes to a team that can use him like Seattle does with like a Devin Weatherspoon or Brian Branch, I just think he's that type of player, especially if you're in a team that league that starts cornerback. We talk about this all the time with true position. If you can start him at corner where he's basically playing nickel corner or strong safety, and you can start him in your cornerback slot, even better. His value goes up even more. But again, he's like Devin Weatherspoon and Brian Branch. Even if you're in just a start defensive back league, it doesn't matter if it's corner or safety. I think he's going to be a guy worth playing and starting. So he is one of the guys. I honestly thought about taking him where I took Malachi Starks, but just because I figured people are a little lower on Barron, I figured I'd have to take Starks first. Now that might change when the real NFL draft happens, depending on where Barron goes and where Starks goes. There's a chance I could be taking Barron over Starks, but I think clear cut to me, Starks, Amanwore, and Barron are the top 3 DBs you want to have in IDP this year. I think those are the guys you want to shoot for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things
I said outside of Travis Hunter, I should say. Outside of him being that, but the pure defensive guys, I think those are the top 3 DBs. I want to. All those guys are on my radar.
Absolutely, and so if you want to hear more about those defensive backs, make sure to head over and listen to our episode where we were breaking down rookie prospects at the defensive back position. You nailed it right on the head. Danny Stutzman, just want to bring up really quickly, the linebacker. The guy is, for me at this point, I want thumpers at the linebacking position. I want guys who gets defensive stops. I don't care about efficiency. I just want basically I don't want to say roster clogger, but I want a rosterable asset. Is that the nice way of saying that? Yeah. At the linebacker position that can give you some depth if, God forbid, the worst of the worst happens injury-wise. And so folks, we'll be posting the results of this mock, I want to say tomorrow afternoon on our Fantasy and Frames social media channels. Really want to shout out everybody who is watching Shoot the Gap with us here this past hour. Really appreciate you. And again, if you like what you heard, go over wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe to the Shoot the Gap podcast, give us a nice review, let us know what you think, or head over to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe and notification bell so you're notified when Fantasy and Frames drops awesome fantasy football content. As well as follow us all over our social media handles at Fantasy and Frames, and head over to fantasyandframes.com for our rankings and articles. Again, once we have so many articles coming out already pre-NFL draft, and they're only going to go to the moon once the NFL draft is over, because now we have landing spots. Now we have things to talk about. Now we have reassessments to do on these rookie mocks. So just a lot of fun. We got Fourth and Frames coming up next, where we're going to be doing our very first early redraft mock draft heading into the NFL draft. Before we go, though, JT, anything you want to plug real quick?
Well, I was going to say maybe, because we'll see a lot of IDP go a little bit later, maybe we come back with a 4th, 5th, 6th round mock draft where we see a little more of the other IDP guys you want to look at. Because Danny Sussman, he's a guy I'm keeping my eye on. I don't think he goes high in the NFL draft, but I think a team's going to love him. I think like you said, he's a thumper. I think he could go 4th, 5th round, but a guy that goes 4th, 5th round has a legit chance at starting as a rookie in the NFL, depending where he lands. So let's come back and talk about a few more of those guys, some D linemen, some other people we'll like later in the draft. Cause I always feel like 4th round for me, I go super heavy IDP in the 4th and 5th round of drafts. And then 6th round, usually I'm just looking for pure value. I'm looking at who's falling at what position and grabbing those guys. So maybe we come back on another show here and we pile up a heavy dose of IDP for you.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in. Fourth and Frames is next. I know the guys are waiting with bated breath. Thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next week.